What's crack-a-lackin', fellow spooky dogs? October is here. What do you think of my Halloween costume? I know it's not really scary horror or anything, but hey, it's Halloween. An opportunity to express yourself. Anyway, in today's video, we will be counting down from worst to best the final battles in the Spider-Man films. Now, this doesn't count as a film review. This isn't worst to best films, it is just final battles in isolation of themselves. And as always, do try to remember, this is just my personal opinion. But if you're going to get all bent out of shape about it, here's your makeup and here's your sponge. Without further ado, let's do this. So, coming in at number 8, we have the final battle from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. The thing about the third act of The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is the build-up to the final battle is superb, where Spider-Man's getting chased down by the cops and he's swinging through the cranes. It's really great stuff. There's kind of this sense of magic in the air to it, and some of the cinematography is really great. But then you get to the final battle itself, Spider-Man versus the Lizard, and there's just really not anything worthy of note here. So Spider-Man and the Lizard are battling it out on top of the Oscorp Tower, and they don't really make much use of the sheer gravity that you could have with a battle as high up as that. It's really just kind of Peter and the Lizard struggling about for a bit on the floor of this rooftop, before Peter kind of climbs to the top of the antenna to disperse the antidote to the Lizard's turn everybody into lizard gas. The thing is, this fight in itself doesn't really have anything memorable or worthy of note to it, with the exception of, I guess, Captain Stacy's death, but all of it goes by so quick. It's such a quick fight. I think the actual fight here is only about 2 minutes. So overall, The Amazing Spider-Man's final battle is fine. None of the battles on this list are bad, but it's definitely not the most noteworthy thing about The Amazing Spider-Man, and probably the least noteworthy final battle in the series for me. So coming in at number 7, we have the final battle from Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming is one of my favorite Marvel films, and this final battle is really great, don't get me wrong. But unlike previous Spider-Man films before it, and Spider-Man films that would come after it, Spider-Man Homecoming doesn't really pride itself on its action first and foremost, and that definitely comes across in this battle here. And it's probably one of the more intimate final battles of any Spider-Man film, because usually the public's involved and it's this big cataclysmic event. This isn't that, it's just Peter trying to stop Vulture from robbing a Stark jet. Now, what's cool about this is how they do raise the stakes, in that the plane gets absolutely trashed. We've also got Spider-Man without his tech and gear that Tony Stark has supplied to him, fighting in his very own homemade suit. And Spider-Man and Vulture's character dynamic is what makes this interesting. I also kind of like how Vulture fights like an actual bird would, the way the wings strike at him. It's just an action sequence that constantly deconstructs itself. The plane gets more and more broken. It crashes into a beach by the side of Coney Island. Peter runs out of his web fluid. The Vulture starts to malfunction. This is a really cool action sequence, even if it isn't very high on this list. I guess one thing that's a little disappointing is I really love the idea of a Spider-Man battle happening on the Coney Island where all the amusements are. And you can see it in the background there, but they just never go to it. And it's like, come on, imagine a Spider-Man final battle happening in an amusement park. That would be so awesome. Never mind though, maybe someday in the future. In 6th place, we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2's final battle. Now, this fight is very much a double bill. You've got Electro, and then you've got the Green Goblin after him. Now, there's a lot that doesn't really work for me in this fight. On one hand, I think the fight is pretty overproduced in terms of some of the visuals. There's sparks flying everywhere in the Electro portion, there's green fog and mist everywhere in the Green Goblin's portion, and I think you can kind of do without that. It starts to look a bit too video gamey at that point. There's also the 2 planes that are hurtling towards each other during the Electro fight scene. A, that doesn't make any sense, and B, Spider-Man isn't even aware of that imminent threat, so it's like, there's this really big disconnect between the stakes and the fight itself. But with the negatives out of the way, these action sequences are damn good. I would be lying if I told you I didn't find the Electro power plant fight to be utterly exhilarating. This is the most fizz-bang-pop Spider-Man battle we've ever seen. It is sheer cinematic candy, as Spider-Man is just being thrown around this power plant, and there's streaks of electricity everywhere. It's literally a VFX artist's wet dream. Utterly unconvincing, doesn't suit the actual movie in itself, considering it tried to be taken pretty seriously and kind of grounded, but at the same time, like, in isolation, I can watch this thing over and over again. And then we move over to the Green Goblin battle, which takes place inside of a clock tower and really sort of culminates that theme of time. And, you know, like, the way they use the clock metaphor during the battle as well, Peter trying to stop time by putting his foot between the cogs, the clock speeding up rapidly when Gwen Stacy drops. Oh man, that's awesome. I could have done without the hilarious metaphor with the web hand, that's just a metaphor too far, and it does lose the shock of Gwen Stacy's death when you telegraph it throughout the entire movie and then have a slow-mo. But aside from that, really exhilarating, really well put together. Hans Zimmer's soundtrack really adds a lot of energy to it as well. Just a really exciting, energizing sequence altogether. In 5th place, we have Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And it's a movie that very much prides itself on its action, but it doesn't pride itself on its final battle because it's fully aware it's not the biggest fight in this movie. You've had the Spider-Man versus Doc Ock fight on top of the train, which is easily the high point of Spider-Man action, the most intense it gets. And the final battle of Spider-Man 2 is very much kind of a coda to that. It's more just the conclusion of that Doc Ock v Spider-Man dynamic. But it's the characters and the introductions and the performances that make this really click. It's very much a quick fight. Doc Ock really just slings Spider-Man around for a little bit before finally kind of, you know, giving in. And it's a really great character moment, but it's done so well that it does eclipse the more energizing battle of, say, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for me. Especially when Doc Ock and Spider-Man first confront each other in the warehouse. Superb acting, superb directing, just a great sequence, very quick, but a great sequence. In 4th place, we have the final battle from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now let's face it, a great big action sequence done with the direction and art style of Into the Spider-Verse was intrinsically going to be a win-win. Not to mention, there's not just one Spider-Man in this film, so that's really going to change up the dynamic. So you've got Peter B. Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, the Peter Parker of Spider-Man Noir, Peter Porker, and Penny Parker, all fighting side by side inside this giant collider that is ripping the universe apart. And with that comes some absurd visuals. And then we've got how these different Spider people approach this fight, and they're fighting off against different Spider-Man villains. There's Doc Ock, there's Scorpion, there's the Kingpin. And when it all comes down to it, what it all boils down to is Miles Morales sending the other Spider people home, and then he confronts Kingpin for the last time. And it is so compelling to see him be almost destroyed by Kingpin in the way that the Peter Parker of his world was, but he gets back up like Spider-Man always does and defeats Kingpin just when it seems impossible, just when it seems like everything is coming to its end. It's glorious. They kicked it into the high gear here, but I'm gonna say this, it's not even my favorite fight in this film. It's a damn good fight, but for me, I think that would go to the house battle. Man, that fight scene, man, this whole movie. Holy shit, dude, we are lucky to have Spider-Man movies. In 3rd place, we have the final battle from Spider-Man 1. Another final battle that very much works in phases. So it begins at the Brooklyn Bridge with the Green Goblin offering Spider-Man a choice. Let die the woman he loves or suffer the little children. A sequence that's sure to give any longtime Spider-Man fan goosebumps because we do not like the image of the Green Goblin suspending Peter's love interest over the Brooklyn Bridge. But in a way that is very quintessentially Spider-Man, he finds a way to do both, and as well as that, the citizens of New York help him out. It's beautiful. The way the barge comes in to help Spider-Man rescue the children, the way the New Yorkers try and distract the Green Goblin by throwing shit at him, it's uplifting, it's what I love to see. But the Green Goblin gets the upper hand by slinging Spider-Man into an abandoned hospital. And this, you're not going to see anything like this in a superhero movie again. There have been R-rated superhero movies since, but I do think this is one of the most intense and violent superhero final battles I've ever seen. I'm not counting TV here. I know like The Boys and The Punisher have done some pretty gross stuff, but you're never gonna see this in an MCU Spider-Man film, put it that way. The Green Goblin is vicious. He's violent. This is a character that needs to die. Like, you can't have this guy alive. And in the end, Spider-Man just has to beat him into submission and overpower him, but Spider-Man's not the one that kills him. The Green Goblin does it to himself. He takes a glider to the balls. Just incredible. Just, it's absolutely insane how good this final battle is. Like, both phases of this are perfect. Like, just, it's the chef's kiss, man. You'll love to see it. In second place, we have the final battle from Spider-Man Far From Home. This is an action sequence that follows a story where Spider-Man's been all scared and worried about whether or not he can live up to Iron Man's position in the Avengers. It's been his #1 insecurity. Can he live up to Iron Man now that he's gone? And this film answers that by having Mysterio bring an Avengers-level threat to London and having Spider-Man act as a one-man Avengers team. As we see Spider-Man just overpowering Mysterio's drones, using his ingenuity to destroy the drones and protect himself, just like Iron Man would, but we also get him holding the London Bridge sign as like a shield and this little hammer thingy as well, so he's kind of like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man all rolled up into one, with I guess kind of the strength and resilience of the Hulk. It's another one that goes in phases. It begins sort of inside this giant illusion as Spider-Man's just taking down the drones from within it, to when Mysterio realizes that he's there and he just decides, instruct all the drones to just destroy him. And it's just Spider-Man having to constantly improvise. And that's what's so great about this, is you see Spider-Man put up a hell of a fight. I don't get how people think this film is disrespectful to Spider-Man. This film literally says Spider-Man alone can take down an Avengers-level threat. Holy shit, that's awesome. And in first place, we have the final battle from Spider-Man 3. Now, this isn't necessarily as perfectly paced as other entries on this list, but holy mother of goddamn, is this what cinema was made for? Okay, I'm being a bit hyperbolic there, but this final battle is just incredible. In the way that it kind of balls up everything there is to know and love about Spider-Man into this one little 15-minute sequence. Every insecurity Spider-Man has ever had is basically coming after him and preying on the love of his life, who he himself has let down. And when it seems like all is lost, he's fighting for her one last time. It's Spider-Man in his rawest state. He's lost everything. He's screwed over his chances with MJ. He and Harry Osborn have effectively burned their bridges with each other. So here's the thing. There is nothing more uplifting than see that trio come together to take on Venom and the Sandman. Venom being the distorted manifestation of everything that could ever have gone wrong with Spider-Man, and Sandman being the killer of Uncle Ben blown up to giant size. The monster that has loomed over Peter Parker all this time, literally in giant monster form looming over him. Oh my fucking god. And of course, the people of New York are there cheering him on. Everybody's involved. J. Jonah Jameson is there. But we've also got the poetic death of Harry Osborn and how it rhymes with the death of Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn. Yeah, he took a glider to the balls again. And once again, it was a glider that was intended for Peter, but it's not Harry that sent it his way, it was Venom. Harry did it as an act of self-sacrifice. And of course, it culminates with Peter forgiving Uncle Ben's killer. It doesn't get much more conclusive than that for a Spider-Man story. At least not in a way that's that satisfying. Spider-Man 3's final battle just fires off on all cylinders, and it may not get everything right at all times. It may not be the most perfectly paced final battle of the bunch, but goddamn is it ever my favorite for what it just sets out to do. But now I hand it over to you folks. What do you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below are links to different social media feeds where you can come and chat with me and see different content that I make, but as well as that is a link to the Patreon and a join button for if you are feeling extra supportive and extra generous, but of course, it's a big ask, you don't have to do that. So, thank you so much for watching guys, and have a very spooky day.